leaving our camp at Gardner and heading for Marangup, which we've read very good things about. Overlooks a lake, and apparently as a result of that, sunset and sunrise can be quite spectacular. It's going to be largely from here on in on white sandy type tracks. It'll change every now and then, but for the main that's going to be what's underfoot. So we've left the other forest terrain, if you like, behind us now. When we reach Marangup tonight, we're only going to be about 2 kilometres from the ocean, and depending on the direction of the breeze, we may well hear it as we're trying to get to sleep. Not a great distance again today, about 16 k's, climbing an elevation all up of probably a little bit over 200 metres, so it's not going to be an arduous day, but I'm starting to feel a little bit aggrieved. I haven't seen, or I've seen them, haven't been able to video any snakes yet. So we're heading into the territory where we should see them. In fact, yesterday, Vicky and Greg at one stage saw 3 in the space of 500 metres, 2 tigers and a dugong. But the issue today is it's quite overcast, and we are likely to get a little bit of rain. So perhaps I'll have to wait for another day. But time will tell. Not long today, probably a little bit after midday, we'll be stopping again for our traditional cup of tea. We should be in Marangup, but we'll keep you updated as the day unfolds. All of a sudden, in the last few hundred metres, change of environment again. Back on the richer, darker soil, far greater foliage either side of the track. Well, here we are at our first major puddle. In fact, more than a puddle. It runs for about 60 or 70 metres. But Jude has found a little track off to the right that we can negotiate to get around it. Success.
Success. It's a long way to go a short distance.
It is indeed. Looks like this bypass is a little bit more civilised. It's even got a little bridge to be able to get over the rubbish. Had some water underfoot, and it looks like the clouds in the distance, we may be getting soon some water from overhead.
quite deep.
Just over 5 k's now from the Marangup campsite, and the sky continues to look more and more threatening. We've had the odd drop, nothing that you'd call even drizzle, but I get the feeling that before we get there we might need the ponchos. Back on the banks of the Gardner River again, and by the look of it, it's actually flowing quite quickly. Quite a nice sight. And it's either through that little gap or that little gap, but I'm certainly not going through the middle. At least there is a way today of getting around most of these things, although with a sizable pack I often have the issue of getting caught between trees. So far, so good. It's a very meandering path. But when you consider the option, and that's it, I'd much prefer this particular path, because not every day are we going to have such a luxury. So we make the most of it whilst we can. As we thought, looking at the sky, it has become heavy now, or heavier. We're still just over 2 k's away from camp, so we thought ponchos on. There's no point getting wet if you don't have to. So I think this is how we'll be clad all the way through to the hut. Well, let's face it, folks, there are a few more places in Australia where you can have more fun on 2 feet.
That was not easy, that one.
No, it wasn't. It was very muddy and water in there, but also it wasn't a very clearly defined path. Oh, Judith, there's another one coming up.
Woohoo!
Oh, welcome to the next few days, folks. Rain from above, pools of water beneath your feet. Welcome to hiking. But seriously, it is all part of the experience. Well, this is the longest stretch of water we've had so far today. And you can see bouncing on top of it are the raindrops from above. Successfully around numbers 1 and 2. And now Jude in front of me is trying to figure out which is the best way to get around number 3, which probably extends from here about another 70 or 80 metres. Only about 100 metres now from the Lake Marangup campsite, called Lake Marangup because it overlooks Lake Marangup. The traditional Noongar word for this area is actually Marangup, which is where we get Marangup from. And Marangup actually means place of the rock wallaby, so we'll need to keep our eyes peeled. But we're only 2 kilometres now away from the coast, and when I last checked on my Fenix watch, the elevation, we're only at about 27, 28 metres above sea level, maybe a little bit higher by the time we get to the hut. But it's been an interesting day's walk, there's no doubt about that. As a newbie who only recently got through hiking, it's the first time I've come across conditions like we did today, where there were large swathes of the track covered in fairly substantially deep water, and as a result had to find some way of bush bashing either left or right to get around. As I've mentioned earlier, the next couple of days those long puddles are going to be even longer. big pools of water with no way of being able to negotiate around the side. You'll just have to go straight through the middle. So another challenge for someone who's new to hiking. But I have to say I'm looking forward to it. Every challenge so far I've been able to meet. As the rain starts to intensify, I can see the hut in the distance. Not too wet with the poncho on. Perhaps a hot chocolate, coffee, cup of tea, and a reflection on what's been an interesting day. About 17 kilometres is all we've done today, and we're actually getting in before midday. Safe to say we don't do big distances each day, and today probably the earliest we've ever got to a hut, but in this weather I must say I'm looking forward to it. Well, wearing the beanie at the moment because it's been extremely cold here at Marangup this afternoon. Around 12 degrees, but when we turned up for about the first 2 or 3 hours, the wind unfortunately was coming from a direction off the lake behind me here and going straight into the three-sided hut like they all are out on the Bibbulmun Track, and the direction it was coming in, it was swirling around and it actually felt like it was about 6 degrees. All of us have been sitting in there this afternoon actually wrapped in our sleeping bags, so not too far away from going to bed here tonight. Hopefully despite the cold we'll all sleep okay, and then off tomorrow to Dogpool. It's going to be a very long walk, around 26 k's, and a lot of water expected. Just leaving Marangup, heading towards the lake. It was a rough night last night, some rain, but the breeze was incredible. But dawn was about half an hour ago, a little bit over half an hour ago, and coinciding with the sunrise, the wind across the lake has dropped to pretty much nothing. The clouds look pretty non-threatening above. There's actually a little bit of blue sky over the lake. We've got a fairly arduous day today, 26 kilometres, a lot of ups and downs, but more importantly, we are probably going to end up facing a little bit more water to either walk through or to hopefully walk around. But the weather is certainly kinder than it was just before dawn, so looking forward to a good day on the trail, and hopefully all of us, all 4 of us, will get through totally unscathed to the other end. And the target today is a little hut called Dogpool. Let's go. This time around we have the added complication of wearing our ponchos. We need to make sure that we don't get them snagged. All of a sudden we're having a distinct change in the weather. The wind is really starting to pick up. You can hear it ripping through the canopy overhead, and the sky is starting to fill in and look a little bit more leaden. So it could well be that on top of the complications of getting wet feet, we may have to be donning the ponchos. We started the day with our pack covers on, but it may well be that in the near future, unless this wind just brings these clouds across and away from here, we could have to take some action in regard to rainfall. As you can see now, it started to rain. It's now gone beyond rain and it's hailing. Jude's just picked up a few little bits of hail to show me. There you go, folks. And not a lot of respite. We've only walked about another 80 metres round the bend, and here is the next bit. Well, this is a remarkable day. We have just stopped in beautiful sunshine on a couple of logs just to have some crackers and peanut butter. We didn't make a tea or coffee just to be able to keep moving. We've got a fair distance still to go, but it's been an incredible day weather-wise. How much longer the sun hangs around remains to be seen, but whilst it is out, we're certainly going to make the most of it.
I just came through and walked through the edge of the water.
Okay. Thankfully, a nice little break walking along a road. It's not too often on the Bibbulmun that we say it's nice to walk along a road. You'd rather be on a bush track or a what they call single track. But today, this is respite. The last lot of water I went through was actually knee height, and it's a little bit of a slog. It probably ran about 70 or 80 metres. We may well get some more before we reach camp. I know that there was a section of the track not that long ago, it was actually around Marangup where we were last night. That hut was actually out of action because the water was above waist high and deemed to be too dangerous, so a very big detour diversion was put in place. We passed a Frenchman who didn't speak a lot of English about 2 hours ago, and he said that he thinks that tomorrow won't be so bad, but then the following day to wool bales, there is going to be a lot of water. So at least we've got a little bit of a taste for it today. Thankfully not a full taste, I only went over once, but yeah, it's a different type of hiking, one that I haven't experienced before. The respite on that road lasted over 4 kilometres, probably more than we actually needed. But here we are now at the dog pool hut. It's another rammed earth hut because it was destroyed as part of that devastating fire that ripped through this area back in 2015. It's called Dog Pool because we're overlooking the Shannon River, and the little area down in front of us is known as Dog Pool. There's a small pool down there. But anyway, after an arduous day, an unusual day, we have reached our destination. The Shannon River really pumping behind me. 27.1 kilometre day today. I don't know what happened in regard to what we were told about elevation. It was about half what we were told at the beginning of the day in regard to what has previously been some very accurate information. First time I've ever hiked through those sorts of conditions, and so I mentioned a little bit earlier, not tomorrow but the day after we're going to go through something even more severe. We had rain on and off, we had that brief hailstorm. We had the ponchos on and off about 4 or 5 times throughout the day. It was a hell of an experience for all those different reasons. A hell of an experience. So hopefully the boots will dry to a little degree tonight. They're certainly going to be dry in the morning. The socks will still be wet. We'll put them all back on and we'll head off for another day. But today is certainly one that will live in the memory bank. Well, you've just seen our day from Marangup to Dog Pool, and there's something that's not actually on that video which I debated long and hard about putting in, and that was not long after I started that day, about 1 kilometre out of the Marangup campsite, I crossed over a log. It was only about 6:30, 7 a.m. in the morning, and there was a tiger snake on the other side, and it decided that it didn't like to be disturbed, and it put its fangs into the outside of my right boot. Jude was quickly on the scene and was a little bit concerned. We removed the boot and she thought she could see a puncture mark just below my ankle bone. And as a result, she got her pressure bandage out and put it on. I didn't believe that there'd been any penetration of the skin, and after about a 45-minute interesting debate, she took the bandage off and said that if I felt any dizziness or nausea, that she was going to press the PLB and I was going to be taken out of there. In some ways, perhaps I should have taken her advice and we should have left straight away. I didn't feel that it was that type of injury, if you like. I didn't believe that I'd been bitten by a snake as such. But I guess the message is that you should never ever take it lightly. In the end, I was fine, but perhaps I should have taken Jude's advice and left. I'm glad I didn't, but yeah, we wrestled with whether to put this in the video or not. But in the end, it was a close encounter. It was an encounter that did no damage. And as you'll see over the next few episodes, we made it all the way to Albany. The start of another day. It's just after 6 a.m. We've crossed over the Shannon River, which is still bubbling and burbling as it did throughout the night. It sounded like actually going to sleep only a few hundred yards from a seashore. Today we're off to Mount Chance, about 20 kilometres ahead of us, and some more wading to do. Although we had a gentleman, Peter, staying with us in the hut last night, and he is heading in the other direction, and he reassured us that the first 10 or so kilometres should be okay, but then as you start to get into the back half of today, we are going to have to wade or take evasive action. Last night, not really a highlight, but poor old Greg had one of his water bottles, a solid water bottle, actually penetrated several times by a large rat. We know it was a large rat because Victoria went up to go to the toilet at one stage and saw it. So they're a water bottle down now, and incredible what the vermin will do when they come into a hut. And Greg actually had it full of electrolytes ready for today. So somewhere there's a really charged up rat around here who may not be able to get to sleep later today. Anyway, we're on the road. We're looking forward to seeing what today brings and what Mount Chance is like when we get there, probably early to mid-afternoon. Almost an eerie start to the day today. Quite leaden skies, mainly in the direction that we're heading, so we could be having the ponchos on and off a few times today. We've got the backpacks on already, but for the first time, almost for the entire walk, there's no bird song this morning. The birds are completely silent. All you can hear is the crunching of sand beneath the feet as we walk this road, which is going to last about 4 kilometres from what Peter said overnight. But very unusual, almost an eerie feeling. As I speak, there's a little bit of a sound off to my left, but otherwise it has been dead silent. Normally there is a chorus of birds throughout the day. You hardly go 20 or 30 metres without hearing 1, 2 or 3 of them all in unison, but today almost dead silence. one last tiny bit of water to negotiate before we now head up to our campsite known as Mount Chance. Called that because of the granite dome that overlooks the camp, from which you can get beautiful 360-degree views. So given it hasn't rained today, the granite shouldn't be too slippery. So it might pop up in a little while after you take the pack off and relax a little bit and have a look at that view. But for now, only about 600 metres or so to get to the hut. We'll be coming back and heading right tomorrow, but for now it's on to where that little bloke is laying down, asleep. Well, the climb to the top of Mount Chance was certainly worth it. Unfortunately, it's very, very overcast today. We were lucky not to get any rain, but it would have been more spectacular at the top had it been a blue sky. Interesting day today again. There was a little bit of water walking, not as much as yesterday, but it's going to be a lot more tomorrow when we make our way to Woolbales. 20.3 kilometres today. What was fascinating was the varied terrain. Every time the soil changed, you had different vegetation. At the moment, we're actually in a beautiful stand of karri trees that are overlooked by the granite Mount Chance. So it's a lovely place to spend the evening. The sky is still grey. I don't know whether we're going to get any rain tonight. Hopefully we will, and it will clear up for tomorrow. But it was a good day's walking, pretty flat. A lot of roads to begin with, but after that, when we moved in towards the single track, is where it got interesting with the swampland. And as I said, a lot more of it tomorrow, but for now, we can relax here at Mount Chance.